Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think that was a important discussion on the 5G and focus on rural broadband, and I, like a lot of the senators on this committee, come from a rural state where we need much more access there, and I'm hoping that we can get to the compromises, some of the ideas that were posted here, but like Senator Thune, it's been an area that I've been very focused on. The FCC instituted what was actually called the Alaska Plan a couple years ago, given the importance of rural broadband and how specific the challenges are in my state. So I'm hoping that we can certainly get to a compromise that enables getting our national 5G strategy in order, but also doing it quickly enough to enable helping more, which this bill does, our rural communities as well. I just want to touch briefly on two of the other bills that were highlighted, particularly by Senator Cantwell, that I appreciate her support on. And the first is the bill establishing the Federal Advisory Committee on Arctic shipping. This is an important issue. It's quite a bipartisan issue as the sea ice in the Arctic is receding and the shipping lanes open. It's an area of increasingly importance for our national economy, national sovereignty, national defense, as Russia and China are increasingly encroaching in this area of the world, and we need to step up as a nation, and I think that that's starting to happen, and this bill will help that, so I appreciate the committee's strong bipartisan support on that. And then also with regard to the NOAA Corps, this is a great, important federal agency that matters to all of our states, particularly my state, but to be able to focus on modernizing, enhancing the commissioned officer corps with regard to their mission, with regard to their resources, and I think that it's very, very important. And again, to see the strong bipartisan support here, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that work and looking forward to doing more with regard to enhancing that important federal agency in our federal government. Thank you.
Would Senator Sullivan yield for a question before you finish up here?
Sure.
On this advisory committee, could you just describe what's happening with Russia as it relates to transport across the Arctic and why this advisory committee is so important?
So I don't often quote President Putin, but I will here. He has stated that he sees the Arctic as the new Suez Canal because there's increasing shipping, particularly the Northern Sea route, and he says the Russians are going to control it. That's not in anyone's interest. It's certainly not in the interest of the United States, but they are taking actions. I just got briefed yesterday. It's now up to 50 icebreakers with 13 more that they're building. And to be able to control this increasingly important line of transportation and commerce for the world, that goes right by my state. It goes right by Washington State. And we're not ready for it. And we're not prepared. And this is American sovereignty, American economic commerce and opportunity, but it's also national security. And what we're trying to do here in a bipartisan way is get the federal government focused on it and get the federal agencies focused, particularly on the commerce aspect, before we wake up, not just with regard to Russia, but China is now referring to itself as a near Arctic state, whatever that means. Because the Arctic is over 900 miles away from China's closest territory. We're an Arctic nation because of my state, Alaska, but they've publicly stated that they seek to expand their Belt and Road Initiative to the Arctic. That's all commerce, that's resources, that's transportation. So when we talk about great power rivalry, which is the new national defense strategy focused on that, I think that has a lot of bipartisan support. That rivalry is happening in the Arctic, on the economic side and the national security side, and our nation needs to focus on it. This bill will certainly help that, particularly on the economic and transportation side. So I thank the chairman and the ranking member for their strong support of this.
I had no idea what your answer would be, but that was very well stated, and I would just add the chairman and I in our underlying Coast Guard bill are trying to further our efforts with more authorization for icebreakers so that we too can have the marine transportation system that will help move product. So thank you.
Thank you.
And before I recognize Senator Baldwin, let me associate myself with the remarks of my ranking member and Senator Sullivan about the importance of the Arctic and facilitating global commerce in a way that does not give one country with questionable leadership the authority to dominate the entire region. So this is something that Senator Cantwell and I are very, very interested in, and it's going to require some additional work and emphasis over time. So thank you, Senator Cantwell, for working with me on that, and thank you, Senator Sullivan.